My hands were still shaking from what happened when I realised this was just the start of a long, winding road, one full of heartbreak but sprinkled with surprises that'd make your jaw drop. Hey there, folks, I'm Evelyn, though everyone around here just calls me Grandma Evie. I'm 72, and I'm about to share a story I've kept locked away in my heart for nearly 40 years. I grew up in a sleepy little town in Kentucky, back when women were expected to keep quiet and stay in their lane. Now I call Nashville home, where I piece my life back together after everything I'm about to tell you. Before I dive in, I want to give a big shout out to all of you tuning in. If you're liking this, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter from this old gal. Drop a comment and let me know where in the US you're watching from. I love picturing all the places this story's reaching, and it warms my heart. I was born in 1951 on a small farm in rural Kentucky. My dad, Henry, worked the fields, growing corn, soybeans and tobacco. My mum, Clara, took in laundry from the neighbours and sold handmade quilts at the local farmers' market. We didn't have much, but there was always food on the table and love in our home. I grew up with 5 siblings, 3 boys, 3 girls, and as the second oldest I was changing diapers, cooking dinner and scrubbing floors before I was out of pigtails. School, I made it through 4th grade and that was it. Dad said, girls only need enough learning to not get swindled at the grocery store. My brothers, though, they could study as long as they pleased. My childhood smelled like simmering beans, damp soil after a spring rain, and the smoky warmth of our wood stove. We woke with the roosters and went to bed when the oil lamp flickered out. No electricity, no running water, just a well out back and baths in a tin tub. It was a simple life, but to me it was the only one I knew. When I got my first period at 12, I thought I was dying. Mum just said, "You're a woman now, Evie. Be careful around boys." That was it. No details, no explanations. I pieced things together from hushed giggles with older friends, their words dripping with shame and half-truths. Dad was strict, but never laid a hand on us. He had that old-school tough guy vibe, thought showing love was for softies. Mum, though, was all hugs, lullabies, and bedtime stories that made the world feel safe. Things shifted when I hit 16. Suddenly, guys at the market, church, or the county fair started eyeing me like I was the last slice of pie. I was lanky, with long brown hair down to my waist. Nothing special, but in a small town any girl got noticed. It was at the 1967 county fair that I met James. He was from the next town over, tagging along with his buddies for the fun. Tall, broad-shouldered and working construction, James was 22 with a grin that could make you forget your own name. "Care to dance, miss?" he asked, holding out his hand as the bluegrass band fiddled away. I glanced at Dad, who gave a small nod. Good girls didn't go off alone back then. The air smelled of corn dogs, cotton candy and hay bales. I danced with James until my feet ached and sweat dripped down my back. When he walked me back to my family, something inside me had shifted. "Can I swing by this Sunday?" he asked. That Sunday, James showed up at our house, dressed sharp, hair slicked back, with a box of chocolates for Mum. He chatted with Dad about work, baseball and life, and won over my little siblings with corny jokes and games. Mum poured coffee, and he swore it was the best he'd ever had. That's how our courtship started. Sunday visits, always with a chaperone. James would sit in the living room, me perched nearby, keeping a proper distance, our talks stiff but sweet. Sometimes he'd bring a small gift, a hair ribbon, some apples, or a little journal for me to jot down my thoughts. "Evie, he seems like a good one," Dad said after a few months. "But take it slow. Guys promise the moon until they get what they want. Then they change." I should have listened closer. For the first 6 months, James was a dream, kind, patient, respectful. He talked about becoming a construction foreman, owning a house, starting a family. He told me about his dad, Walter, a widower who raised 3 boys alone and owned a small general store. Dad never remarried, James said proudly, and said no woman could replace Mom. I thought that was sweet. Oh, how wrong I was. I met Walter when James took me to his family's place one Sunday. I brought homemade cornbread to win them over. Walter was a big man, taller than James, with greying hair and rough, calloused hands. His stare cut right through you. "So, you're the girl keeping my boy distracted," he said, sizing me up. A chill ran down my spine. It wasn't the warm, fatherly look I'd expected. It felt like he was appraising a car at a dealership. I looked down like good girls were taught to do. If only I'd trusted that gut feeling and bolted. The visit was off. Walter grilled me. Could I cook, clean, sew? Was I a decent girl? Did I want a big family? James looked uncomfortable but didn't speak up. His brothers acted like this was normal, almost bored. "She's a good one, Dad," James finally said. "Comes from a solid family." Walter's reply was ice cold. "Just making sure who's joining us. A woman needs to know her place from the get-go." I went home uneasy, but kept quiet. I chalked it up to old-fashioned ways. How naive was I? The courtship rolled on, and James proposed a year later. I was 17, he was 23. Our engagement was simple, a small party at home with Mum's homemade cake, shared cokes, and neighbours crowding in. My parents scraped together what little they had to help with my trousseau. James rented a tiny 2-room house in town, small, but it felt like the start of our big dream. We married in January 1969, just after my 18th birthday. My dress was a simple white one Mom and my aunt stitched, with a borrowed veil and a bouquet of wildflowers picked that morning. The ceremony was in our little town church, packed to the rafters. Small-town weddings were everybody's business. Walter came with his other sons, his eyes locked on me the whole time, like he was judging if I measured up. No smile, no warmth, just that cold, calculating stare. At the reception he drank more than anyone, not sloppy but loose-lipped. He grabbed James's shoulder and said, "You've got a job now, son. A woman's like a horse, needs a firm hand or she'll run wild." James gave an awkward laugh. I acted like I didn't hear, swallowing his words with my wedding cake. Our wedding night was like most back then, clumsy, scary, and full of ignorance. James wasn't cruel, but he didn't know much beyond locker-room talk, and I only knew the lie still and take it advice whispered by older women. I woke up a wife, a married woman, a homemaker. The path ahead seemed clear. Keep house, care for my husband, have kids, repeat the cycle I'd seen all around me. Those first months were all about settling in. James worked long hours, gone before dawn, back after dark. I cooked, cleaned, and sometimes embroidered to sell for extra cash. James didn't love that, said it made him look like he couldn't provide. Once a month we visited Walter, and those trips always left me on edge. He'd inspect our home like a drill sergeant, running a finger over shelves for dust, checking my pots for grease. "You can tell a woman by her kitchen," he'd say, like I wasn't standing right there. When James wasn't around, Walter's comments got worse. "A good wife would have given me a grandkid by now," or "You're too skinny, men want something to hold on to." I stayed quiet. He was my husband's father, deserving respect, or so I'd been taught. Truth is, I was scared of him. Those piercing eyes, those big hands, that air of control. Things took a turn when I got pregnant in late 1969. James was over the moon, treating me like I was made of glass. Walter, though, showed up at our house, something he never did. "Now you're a real woman," he said, eyeing my flat belly. "Better be a boy. World's got enough women." Pregnancy was rough. Nausea, exhaustion, aches that came and went. The town doctor said it was normal for a young body adjusting. James worried, but had to work. I was alone most days, managing as best I could. Walter started dropping by more, always when James was gone, bringing baby stuff. A crib he'd made, old clothes from his boys, a rocking horse for a grandson. His visits came with that same unsettling stare. "A pregnant girl needs looking after," he'd say. "My boy's working too hard to be here all the time." One sticky summer evening, when I was 5 months pregnant, Walter showed up with a bottle of homemade wine. "It'll give you strength," he said, pushing a glass toward me when I hesitated. "Pregnant women need strong blood." Not wanting to seem rude, I took a small sip. It tasted off, bitter, almost metallic. 2 hours later, I was doubled over, clutching my stomach as pain ripped through me, blood pooling beneath me. Walter was long gone by then. I screamed until a neighbour rushed over. That night I lost the baby. The doctor shrugged it off. "Lots of women lose their first. It's just how it goes." Nobody thought twice about the wine, not even me, not then. It wasn't until years later that the puzzle pieces clicked and a chill ran down my spine. James was heartbroken, but he bounced back fast, like guys often do. "We'll try again, Evie," he said, patting my hand. "God's got a plan." Walter came to the funeral, his face sombre, but his eyes cold, almost relieved. It was like he was checking a box, not mourning a grandchild. After that, James changed. It started small, grumbling about my cooking, nitpicking how I folded his shirts. Then he started drinking more, stumbling home later and later. At first, it was just sharp words, but soon those turned to yelling. The first slap came when I asked where he'd been all night. It landed hard across my cheek, knocking me into the wall. "Don't you ever question me," he growled. "Know your place." I cried in the bathroom all night, a washcloth stuffed in my mouth to muffle the sobs. Come morning, James acted like nothing happened, and I played along, because that's what women did back then. That slap opened a floodgate. Shoves turned to punches, always after too many beers, always followed by apologies the next day. He'd bring wildflowers, swear it'd never happen again, even shed a tear or two. And I forgave him, because I thought that's what love was, because my parents were gone in a car crash 6 months after our wedding, because I had nowhere else to go. I believed love was a mix of sweet and sour, like lemonade left out too long. Walter knew, I'm sure of it. On his monthly visits, he'd squint at the bruises I tried to hide under long sleeves in July heat, or the caked-on makeup I used to cover marks. "A woman's got to keep her man happy," he'd say with a smirk. "When she doesn't, she gets taught a lesson." I'd nod and look away, my stomach churning. In 1972, I got pregnant again. James eased up on the drinking, and the hitting stopped for a while. Walter stayed away during those months, which was a relief, like a storm cloud passing over. This pregnancy was smoother, and in October, our daughter Lily was born. Perfect, with her daddy's blue eyes and my dark hair. James wanted a boy, but he melted when he held her. "Walter?" He barely glanced at his granddaughter. "Girls are just trouble," he muttered. "Another mouth to feed, no payoff." Lily gave me a spark I hadn't felt in years. I drew a line. No matter how drunk James got, he wasn't allowed to lay a hand on me in front of her, even as a baby. He respected that mostly, taking his outbursts to the bedroom or out back. But they didn't stop. For 2 years life limped along. James working and drinking, me raising Lily and tiptoeing around his moods, Walter's visits like a dark cloud that wouldn't leave. Then, in 1974, everything shattered. James was 29, I was 23, and Lily was almost 2. It was a Friday, and James promised to come home early to take Lily to the town's 4th of July fireworks. She was bouncing with excitement, twirling in her little red dress. But night fell, and no James. It wasn't new. He'd often head straight to the bar after work, but he'd promised her. By 9 p.m, I tucked Lily into bed, her eyes wet as I lied about fireworks tomorrow. She fell asleep sniffling. At midnight, a knock rattled the door. It was James's buddy, Mike, pale as a ghost, hands shaking. "Evie, there's been an accident," he stammered. "At the site, scaffolding collapsed. James fell, 3rd floor." The world spun, his words echoing like they were underwater. I don't remember much after that, just leaving Lily with a neighbour, sobbing in Mike's truck, praying every prayer I knew. At the hospital, the doctor was blunt. "He's gone, instant, didn't suffer." As if that softened the blow for a 23-year-old widow with a toddler, they showed me his body under a sheet. His face was wrong, broken by the fall, but his hands, those hands that held me, hurt me, rocked our daughter, were the same. I cried for it all. The James I danced with at the fair, the dad who sometimes shined through, even the man who broke me down. I cried for the future we'd never have, for the promises he made on good days that we'd be okay. The days after were a blur. The funeral was simple. We had no money for anything fancy. Walter took charge, paid for it all, his face blank like he was burying a stranger, not his son. "Life goes on," he said at the graveside as the coffin lowered. "You and Lily can count on me." His words felt like a lifeline then, a rope thrown to a drowning woman. I didn't see the thorns wrapped around it. Back home, the silence was deafening. James's work boots sat by the door. His scent lingered on the clothes I'd washed. Life with him had been hard, but at least I wasn't alone. Now it was just me and Lily, with no job, no savings. James never let me work outside the home, and my embroidery barely covered thread. The landlord stopped by with fake sympathy and a reminder that rent was due. That's when Walter made his offer. "Come live with me," he said, sitting in my living room 3 days after the funeral. "My place is big. Empty rooms since the boys moved out. Lily'll have a better life than in this shack." I hesitated, that old shiver creeping up my spine, the same one I felt when I first met him. But what choice did I have? No family, no close friends after years away from home. "Just till I get a job, get on my feet," I said. "Sure," he replied too quick, "till you're steady." A week later, Lily and I moved into Walter's house on a quiet farm outside town, surrounded by cornfields. It was simple but roomy. 3 bedrooms, a big living room, a kitchen with a wood stove, and a yard with chickens and a dairy cow. His general store sat out front, facing the road. At first, things were calm. Walter left early for the store, came back for lunch I'd cooked, then worked till dark. He was polite, kept his distance. He barely noticed Lily, but at least he didn't scowl at her anymore. I kept the house spotless, cooked, washed, ironed. Lily loved the yard, chasing chickens and giggling like she'd found paradise. Slowly, the grief started to settle, replaced by routine and the need to keep going. I started looking for work, offering sewing and embroidery to store customers. It wasn't much, but I squirreled away every penny in an old cookie tin, dreaming of a fresh start. Then, about a month in, Walter changed. It was subtle at first, a stare that lingered too long over dinner, a weird compliment about my dress hugging my curves, questions about when James and I last spent time together. "A young thing like you must miss it," he said one night after Lily was asleep. I laughed it off, thanked him for dinner, and locked my bedroom door, a habit I'd started without thinking. The unease grew, but I told myself I was imagining things, that grief was twisting my head. Then, 2 months in, he crossed a line. Lily had a fever, and I'd been up all night with her. Walter offered to grab medicine from town. "Rest," he said when he got back. "I'll watch Lily." Exhausted, I collapsed on my bed and passed out. I woke to the mattress creaking, a heavy weight pinning me down. Walter, shirtless, his breath reeking of whiskey, loomed over me. "Shh," he hissed, his hand clamping over my mouth. "Don't wake Lily," Walter whispered, his voice low and menacing. I fought like a cornered animal, kicking, scratching, biting. For a split second, shock gave me the upper hand. I shoved him off and bolted to Lily's room, locking the door behind me. He didn't push it that day, just stood outside, breathing heavily. "Just a misunderstanding, Evie," he said, like he'd spilled coffee instead of crossing a line. "No need for all this drama." I stayed barricaded with Lily all afternoon, heart pounding, only slipping out for water and food when he left for the store. That night he knocked again, his voice smooth as if nothing had happened. "Evie, don't be childish. Let's talk like adults. It was a mistake. Won't happen again." I didn't answer, clutching Lily as her fever finally broke, praying for daylight. At dawn I heard the door unlock. He had keys to everything. I woke to him looming over the bed where Lily and I slept. "Make a sound and you'll scare her," he said, calm but cold. "Come to my room. We'll sort this out." My fear for Lily outweighed my own terror. I followed him silently, leaving her sleeping. What happened in his room that night? I can't bring myself to spell out, even after all these years. All I'll say is it broke something in me, left me hollow, like a tree rotted from the inside. Come morning, Walter sipped his coffee and headed to the store, acting like it was just another day, except for that smug grin, like a cat that got the cream. "Our little secret," he said when we were alone. "Nobody'd believe you anyway, a widow scheming to take my house, my land, that's what they'll think." He was right. Who'd take the word of a penniless young woman over a respected community man? And where would Lily and I go if they did? I started barricading our door with chairs, tables, anything I could drag. But he always found a way in, always had an excuse for Lily, for neighbours, for my red eyes and the nighttime noises. "Mommy's just missing Daddy," he'd tell Lily when she asked why I was crying. I tried to run twice. The first time I got as far as the road, Lily in my arms, a small bundle of clothes on my back. Walter caught us, dragged us back, Lily sobbing, confused. "Try that again and she stays with me," he hissed later. "I've got money, lawyers, friends. You've got nothing." The second time I made it to the bus stop, boarding a bus to Nashville. Then Walter showed up with the town sheriff, his old drinking buddy. "My daughter-in-law's not right in the head since my son died," he told the sheriff, voice dripping with fake concern. "Trying to take my granddaughter away, poor thing." The sheriff gave me a pitying look. "Go home, Mum. Kids need stability." That's when it hit me. No one would help. The nightmare would end only when he decided. 3 weeks into that hell, Walter got drunker than usual. The harvest was good, his store was thriving, and he celebrated alone while I tucked Lily in. That night he came for me, more brutal than before. It wasn't enough to take, he wanted to hurt, to humiliate. When I fought back, he slammed me against the wall, dragged me by my hair. "Just like James's mum," he slurred mid-assault. "She played hard to get at first too." The words froze me. His wife, the one he respected so much, had lived this same nightmare. I couldn't hold back my screams, the pain, the despair, too much. Lily woke, banging on the door. "Mommy, are you hurt?" "Go back to bed," Walter roared. Her scared little footsteps broke something in me. A fire lit inside, a mother's fury, raw and unstoppable. Lily wouldn't grow up watching her mum be torn apart, thinking this was normal. In a surge of rage, I broke free, sprinting to the kitchen with Walter stumbling after me, drunk and sneering. I grabbed the iron skillet, still warm from dinner. When he lunged, that sick grin on his face, I swung with everything I had. The skillet cracked against his head, a sound I'll never shake. He dropped to his knees, then collapsed, blood pooling on the concrete floor. I stood frozen, skillet in hand, staring at the red spreading beneath him. I felt nothing, no guilt, no relief, just a void. Lily appeared at the door, eyes wide. "Is Grandpa hurt?" I dropped the skillet, scooped her up, covering her eyes. "Grandpa's sleeping, sweetheart. Let's go to your room. We're going on an adventure." I tucked her in, spinning tales of a big city we'd see, while my mind raced. Back in the kitchen, Walter was still, no pulse, no breath. I'd killed him, the man who'd tormented me, who'd likely done the same to James's mum, the man everyone respected, never questioned. Calling the police wasn't an option. A widow killing the father-in-law who sheltered her. They'd lock me up, maybe for good. What would happen to Lily? So I made a choice that changed everything. I dragged his body to the pig pen out back, where his 2 massive hogs snorted in the dark. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Not to him, but to whatever force might be listening. I heaved him over the fence. The pig sniffed, then started in. I couldn't watch, but I stayed, needing to be sure. Back inside, I scrubbed the kitchen until my hands bled. Floor, walls, every speck of blood. I burned my stained clothes, scrubbed my skin raw in the shower, packed a suitcase with essentials, and took the cash in the house. Not much, but enough to start over. At first light, I woke Lily. "We're going on our trip, baby," I said. "New places, new adventures." "What about Grandpa?" she asked. "He's staying to watch the house. We'll write him later." We walked to the road, caught the first bus to Nashville, a big city where we could vanish. As the bus pulled away, I glanced back at the shrinking house, the store, the yard where I'd buried a piece of my soul. Lily slept in my lap, innocent, unaware. I stayed awake, seeing only blood, Walter's lifeless eyes, the skillet in my hand. I didn't regret it. I'd protected my daughter, survived, but the weight of it clung to me. We rolled into Nashville on a muggy afternoon in 1974. The bus station was chaos, crowds, noise, smells that overwhelmed a small-town girl like me. Lily clung to my neck, spooked by the bustle, our single suitcase all we had, and less than $100 in my pocket. "Where are we going to sleep, Mommy?" she asked, her eyes heavy from the 6-hour ride. Good question. I had no one, no plan beyond escape. Getting out of that hell was the goal. The rest was a leap of faith. A grey-haired woman who'd sat next to us on the bus, Mrs. Eleanor, must have seen the panic in my eyes. Her kind face and soft voice were like a lifeline in the storm I was drowning in. "You got a place to stay, honey?" Eleanor asked, her grey eyes soft with concern. I shook my head, fighting tears. I was bone-tired, scared out of my mind, and adrift in a city I didn't know. "I know a boarding house downtown," she said. "Not fancy, but it's clean, and the owner's good people. Might cut you a deal with a little one in tow." We followed her onto a packed city bus, then up the steep hills of downtown Nashville. The city was a whirlwind. Towering buildings, some grand, others crumbling, music spilling from every corner, people crowding sidewalks and leaning out windows. It was a far cry from the quiet Kentucky town I'd known, both thrilling and terrifying. The boarding house was in an old brick building, paint peeling, stairs creaking underfoot. Mrs. Agnes, the owner, had a face carved by years and eyes that saw right through you. "Running from your husband?" she asked when we were alone. "My father-in-law," I blurted, instantly regretting it. She nodded, no questions asked. Happens more than folks admit. Our room was tiny, a single bed, a mattress on the floor, a wardrobe that wouldn't shut, but it had a window catching the breeze off the Cumberland River. To someone carrying my kind of baggage, it felt like a castle. Those first days were a crash course in city life. Nashville's heat, humidity, and relentless pace were overwhelming, and the twangy slang sometimes left me lost. But Lily? She took to it like a duck to water, enchanted by the colours, sounds, and bustle. Mrs. Agnes helped me land a job at a sewing factory downtown. The pay was meagre, but it was honest work. I'd rise at 5 a.m, leave Lily with Agnes for a few bucks, and catch 2 buses to the factory. The work was gruelling. 10, sometimes 12 hours hunched over a machine, stitching the same seams, the roar of needles drowning out thought, fabric dust coating my lungs. I'd drag home at night, body aching, fingers pricked raw, eyes burning. Lily was usually asleep by then. Weekends I'd make up for it, taking her to free spots like the park or the riverfront, just us and the bus fare. "You're quiet, Evie," Agnes said one Sunday, watching me braid Lily's hair. "Never talk about your past, your people." It's just me and her, I said, keeping it short. No family, no history, just us. Life settled into a fragile routine, and for a moment I thought we were safe. Then, 3 months in, on a sticky October Sunday in 1974, everything unravelled. We were walking back from the park, Lily skipping ahead, when a newsstand headline stopped me cold. Local store owner missing, murder suspected. Walter's stern face stared from the page. I grabbed the paper, hands shaking, ignoring the vendor's grumble about paying first. The article said the town was stunned by the disappearance of a respected businessman. Bloodstains in the kitchen sparked murder suspicions, and worse, it mentioned the mysterious flight of his daughter-in-law and granddaughter. "Police seek Evelyn Marie Carter for questioning," the last line read. I dropped the paper, scooped up Lily, and ran to the boarding house, heart hammering like it had burst. "We've got to go," I told Agnes, bursting through the door. "What's wrong, child? You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't tell her the truth, not even to this kind woman. "My father-in-law, he's found me. He'll drag us back." It wasn't a total lie. If they caught me, it'd be to a cell, not his house. Agnes didn't pry. She helped pack our suitcase, slipped me some extra cash from her babysitting fees. "Where to now?" she asked. "Another state, maybe," I mumbled. "You'll need new papers," she said. "They'll find you otherwise. I know a guy, but it ain't cheap." Most of my 3 months' savings went to a hunched man who smelled of cigarettes and moonshine. He showed up at midnight with forged documents. "You're Mary Louise Harper now," he said, handing me a birth certificate and ID. "The girl's Anna Lucy. Memorise those names. Don't ever answer to the old ones, even alone." I quit the factory the next day, losing any severance, and we left Agnes's kindness behind. We moved across town to a rough neighbourhood near the airport, renting a cramped room in the back of a family's house. The next months were pure paranoia. Every cop car, every lingering glance, every question about my past made my blood run cold. I barely slept, hardly ate, my ribs poking through my skin. I found work cleaning houses for a family in Belle Mead. The pay was less than the factory, but I could bring Lily. Mrs. Charlotte, my boss, was strict but fair. Her husband, Dr. Thomas, a big-shot doctor, was rarely home. Home? We didn't have one, just a rented room to crash in. We spent our days at Charlotte's, me scrubbing and cooking, Lily playing in the yard. We'd stumble back late, collapse on our shared bed, and start again before dawn. For nearly a year the fear faded into exhaustion, a hollow ache in my chest. I'd escaped Walter's hell, but what kind of life was this for Lily? She turned 4 in May 1975. I couldn't afford a party or a gift, just a cupcake with a makeshift candle. We sang Happy Birthday in our stuffy room, just us. "I wanted a doll, Mummy," she said, her eyes so like James's it hurt. "Next year, baby," I promised. "Mummy's got you." Life dragged on until September, when my worst fear came true. At the grocery store, buying what our thin budget allowed, I saw a poster on the bulletin board, a hand-drawn sketch of my face, unmistakable, with "Wanted for murder" in bold and a reward for tips. The bag of beans in my hand hit the floor, scattering everywhere. "You okay, miss?" the clerk asked. I didn't answer, just grabbed Lily and ran. I didn't go back to the room or Charlotte's. I wandered the city, Lily whining about hunger and tired feet, not understanding. "We're playing hide-and-seek, sweetie," I said, choking down panic. "Can't let them find us." By nightfall, we ended up in a downtown park, Lily asleep in my lap. I stared at the Cumberland River, picturing us stowing away on a boat, starting over somewhere far. But with no money, no safe ID, and a 4-year-old, where could we go? How long until they caught me? That's when I made the hardest call of my life. I couldn't keep running, lying, dragging Lily through this. She deserved better. A real home. A real life. I had to face what I'd done for her sake. The next morning, I washed our faces at a public fountain, smoothed our clothes, and bought bread with my last coins. "We're visiting someone important," I told Lily as she munched hungrily. We walked to the Nashville police station, each step like marching to my own grave. At the desk, the officer eyed my ragged look. "Can I help you?" "I'm Evelyn Marie Carter," I said, voice barely a whisper. "You're looking for me about Walter Santos's disappearance." His eyes widened. Within minutes I was cuffed, torn from Lily as she screamed for me, treated like a hardened criminal. The interrogation dragged on for hours. I spilled everything. James's death, moving to Walter's, the weeks of abuse, that final night. "Got any proof of this abuse?" the detective asked, a greying man with tired eyes who'd heard it all. Proof? What could I show? No witnesses, no visible scars, just my word against a respected man's reputation, just like Walter predicted. That night I slept in a cell with 3 other women, not knowing where Lily was, if she was scared or hungry, if she was crying for me. I threw up the scraps of food they gave me, sick with fear. The next day, more questions, more doubt. A younger officer chimed in. "We slaughtered the pigs on the property. No human remains found." "Where's the body?" the detective pressed, leaning across the table. I told the truth. "I threw it in the pig pen," he smirked. "No body, no crime. But we've got blood in the kitchen and you running off. That's enough to hold you till trial." Those were the darkest days of my life. Worse than Walter's abuse, worse than James's blows. The worst part, not knowing if Lily was okay, not being able to hold her, to tell her I hadn't abandoned her. A week later, a social worker visited, all business with thick glasses and a clipboard. "Your daughter's in a temporary shelter," she said. "She's adjusting, doing fine." "When can I see her?" I asked, voice cracking. "Depends on the case, and if she wants to see you." "She's 4, I snapped. "What do you mean, if she wants?" We explained it in a way she'd understand, she said, that Mommy did something wrong and needs to be away for a while. My heart shattered. Lily, thinking I'd betrayed her, left her behind. It was too much. A month dragged by with no news, no lawyer, no hearing. Just the limbo of a crowded cell, rancid food and constant fear. Then I met Helen, a new cellmate with a fire in her eyes that didn't flinch under the guard's stares. She was in for petty theft, 3 months tops. "You're wasting away, girl," she said on her 3rd day, eyeing the untouched slop on my tray. I spilled my story. What did I have to lose? To my shock, she believed me, her face tightening with anger. "What they did to you is the real crime," she said. "There's a group that helps women like you. When I'm out, I'll find them." I didn't hold my breath. Jail was full of empty promises. But Helen came through. 2 weeks after her release, a lawyer named Abigail showed up, her afro a halo of determination. She worked with a women's rights group. "Your story's more common than you think," she said after hearing it all. "We're fighting for you." Things started moving. Abigail got me a visit with Lily, and it broke me. My little girl, thinner, hair chopped short, looked at me like a stranger. "You hurt Grandpa," she said in the visiting room, her voice small but sharp. "No, baby," I whispered, choking back tears. "Grandpa was hurting Mommy, bad." "How do you explain that to a 4-year-old? How do you make sense of what I did?" Abigail also got me moved to the infirmary. Severe anemia, dehydration and depression had taken their toll. There, I got the worst news yet. On a rainy February afternoon in 1976, Abigail told me James's brothers are suing for permanent custody of Lily. "They say you're unstable, that you made up the accusations against Walter." They knew what he was like, but without proof it was my word against theirs. They had money, a stable home. In the court's eyes I had nothing. The judge gave temporary custody to Robert, James's older brother. That same day he took Lily back to Kentucky. No goodbye, no last hug. It was my lowest point. That night I hoarded my infirmary pills and swallowed them all, desperate to escape the pain. A nurse caught me, and they pumped my stomach, strapped me to the bed. For weeks I barely spoke, barely ate, barely lived, clinging only to the faint hope of seeing Lily again. Then came Sister Clara, an elderly nun who visited the infirmary with wrinkled hands and kind eyes. "God doesn't abandon his daughters," she said, squeezing my hands. "Even in the darkest valley, he's with you." I didn't buy it. What God would let me lose James, endure Walter, and have my daughter ripped away? But Sister Clara didn't quit. She came daily, reading Bible verses or just chatting when I couldn't handle scripture. Her steady presence was like a candle flickering in a pitch-black cave. "Stay strong," she urged. "You've got to fight for Lily when you get out, not if." That "when" hit me hard. Slowly I started eating, healing, believing there might be a light at the end of this tunnel. In April 1976, my first hearing finally came. Abigail had been relentless, digging up witnesses. Helen testified about my state when I turned myself in, terrified and bruised. Agnes travelled from Nashville to describe my frantic arrival, marks of violence still fresh. The breakthrough came when an old employee of Walter's confirmed rumours about James's mother's death. "It wasn't a fever like he claimed," she said in court. "He beat her till she couldn't get up." Still, with no body and my shaky confession, the case was tough. The trial dragged on, months of documents, experts, depositions. I stayed locked up, back in a regular cell but getting steady medical care. In January 1977, nearly 3 years after James's death, the verdict came. Guilty of voluntary manslaughter with mitigating circumstances due to the abuse. 6 years in prison, with a chance for a semi-open regime after 2. It was a win and a loss, recognition of what I'd endured, but years away from Lily. "We'll appeal," Abigail promised. "This isn't fair." That night, on my hard bunk, listening to the prison's hum, I made a vow. I wouldn't just wait out my time, I'd use it. I joined the prison education program, diving into books like I was starving for them. English, math, history. I studied up to 12 hours a day. I took any work they offered, sewing, crafts, cleaning, shaving time off my sentence and saving pennies for the future. I saw Lily twice a year, court-ordered visits with Robert. She grew so fast, each time more distant, calling me Aunt Evie instead of Mum by age 6. It gutted me, but I held on. In 1979, after just over 2 years, I got the semi-open regime. I could work outside, returning to sleep in prison. Sister Clara, my guardian angel, got me a job at her convent's laundry. Stepping into the world again, feeling the sun, seeing the river, was like waking from a long coma. In 1981, I got parole, free to leave but reporting to the court regularly. Sister Clara offered me a room behind the convent for kitchen and laundry work. On a crisp March morning, I walked out of prison at 30 feeling like I'd aged a century. My hair had grey streaks, my body bore the scars of hard years, but I was alive, free, and ready to fight for Lily. Freedom has a smell, you know. That morning in 1981, as the prison gates clanged shut behind me, I breathed in deep. The air carried river breeze, fresh bread from a nearby bakery, and something new, possibility. I was thin, greying early, clutching a plastic bag of clothes. Sister Clara waited outside, her white habit bright against my faded dress. She hugged me, no words needed, the first real embrace I'd felt in years. "Let's go home," she said. Home, a word that felt foreign. I had no home, almost nothing, except a burning need to get my daughter back. The Sisters of Charity Convent sat in a modest Nashville neighbourhood, a quiet corner where I could start piecing my life together again. The convent was an old brick building, its thick walls keeping the Tennessee summer heat at bay. My room was bare bones, a narrow bed, a wobbly wardrobe, a small table with a Bible, but after a prison cell, it felt like a mansion. "Stay as long as you need," Sister Clara said. "Help in the kitchen and laundry, and when you're ready, we'll find you a place." I fell into a routine, up at 5 a.m. with the nuns, brewing coffee, then tackling piles of laundry in the big washroom. The work was tough, but soothing in its simplicity. At night, I hit the books in the convent's small library, determined to keep learning. My goal was laser clear, get stable, financially and emotionally, to have a shot at bringing Lily back. Robert and his wife Susan had raised her for nearly 7 years. She was 11, probably saw me as a stranger, or worse, the woman who hurt her grandpa, like they told her. A month after my release, Abigail, my lawyer, swept in, her afro bigger than ever, her smile fierce. "We can get you regular visit," she said, spreading papers across the convent's kitchen table. "They can't deny a mother's rights, even on parole." It took 3 months of legal wrangling. Robert's fancy lawyers painted me as dangerous, unhinged, a threat to Lily. But the judge, a woman with kind eyes, ruled for me. Bi-weekly Sunday visits, supervised for now. That first visit was in a Nashville park, a neutral spot. I got there an hour early, too jittery to sit still, wearing a thrift store dress and a swipe of lipstick to look normal. When Lily stepped out of Robert's car, my heart caught. She wasn't my little girl anymore, tall, in a school uniform, her long hair swinging. "Hi," she said, her voice flat, eyes sizing me up like I was a stranger. "Hi, my love," I said, my voice thick. "I missed you so much." I reached to hug her, but she stepped back. Of course she did. To her, I was just the woman who popped up twice a year for awkward visits. The social worker, a warm woman in her 40s, suggested ice cream. We sat on a bench, cones dripping in the heat, talking about school, friends, her doll collection. "Uncle Robert and Aunt Susan are taking me to Disney World," she said, her eyes lighting up. I swallowed hard. I'd never be able to give her that, not in a million years. When the visit ended, she hesitated, and for a second I thought she'd hug me. Instead, she waved and ran to Robert's car, where he and Susan waited, the picture-perfect couple. I cried all the way back to the convent, but refused to quit. Each visit I brought a small gift, a bracelet I'd woven, homemade cookies, a little sketch. Slowly, Lily opened up, sharing bits about her friends, her favourite teacher. She started asking about my life, careful not to say prison. On our 5th visit, I explained, picking my words like stepping through a minefield. I did something wrong, but it was to protect myself. Grown-ups make tough choices sometimes. In December 1981, we got our first unsupervised visit. I took her to the riverfront, then an ice cream shop. She held my hand crossing the street, her guard down. Then, out of nowhere, while we played in the sand, "Uncle Robert says you killed Grandpa Walter. Is it true?" My breath caught. Lie, and I'd build our bond on sand. Tell the raw truth, and I'd scar her. "Your grandpa hurt me bad," I said finally. "Things adults shouldn't do. I fought back and he got hurt." "Was he bad?" she asked. "He was sick in the head, baby. He hurt people he should have protected." She nodded, processing, then asked to build a sandcastle. The topic closed for now. While I rebuilt my bond with Lily, I worked on myself. The nuns pushed me to finish my education. I took night classes after long laundry days, and in 1983, at 32, I got my high school diploma. "You're too bright to wash clothes forever," said Sister Rose, the youngest nun who taught at a public school. "Ever thought of teaching?" "Me? A teacher? With my record?" "Your parole ends in 2 years," she said. "After that, nothing's stopping you. We need teachers in poor neighbourhoods." The idea took root like a stubborn weed. I saved every dime, moved from the convent in 1984 to a rented room downtown, and got a better job at an industrial laundry. It was backbreaking, but the pay was decent. When my parole ended in 1986, I enrolled in a nighttime teaching program. Days working, nights studying, weekends with Lily. It was exhausting, but every book I cracked, every lesson I learned, felt like reclaiming my life. Lily was 16 now. a full-on teenager with opinions and attitude. Our relationship had grown. She called me Mom again, though Robert and Susan were still her family. Then the whispers started. That's the woman who killed her father-in-law. Nashville was big, but my story had leaked, maybe from trial gossip, maybe someone from our old town. Classmates in my program stopped talking to me. Laundry customers asked for someone else. At the market, I felt eyes and heard murmurs. The shame hit like a tidal wave, making me feel less than human, unworthy of a second chance. I thought about running again, disappearing, but Lily stopped me. "Mum, you're tougher than that," she said, when I admitted I might leave. "We've been through worse. These people don't know you." My daughter, so young, so wise. Her words kept me going. In 1988, at 37, I finished the teaching programme. Finding a school to hire an ex-convict wasn't easy, but Sister Rose pulled strings for a job at a community school tied to the convent's outreach. My first day teaching literacy to 30 kids, ages 6 to 8, mostly from poor families, was a disaster. Many had never held a pencil, didn't know letters or numbers. I couldn't control the class, fumbled explanations and cried myself home. But I remembered Lily's words and kept at it. I learned to hook them with stories, channel their energy, tailor lessons to their pace. By year's end, when some read their first words alone, the joy was like nothing I'd ever felt. In 1990, my teacher's salary and laundry savings let me rent a real apartment. Living room, bedroom, kitchen, a palace compared to the shoeboxes I'd lived in. Lily was 20, studying nursing on a scholarship Robert's connections secured. She spent weekends with me, sometimes sleeping over. "Uncle Robert and Aunt Susan were good to me," she said one night, curled up on my couch, "but something was always missing. You, your story, your strength." I hugged her, tears falling. My daughter didn't just come back, she admired me, despite my mistakes. In 1992, everything shifted again. Robert died of a heart attack. Susan, childless and devastated, leaned on Lily, who stayed to support her. "She took care of me all those years, Mum," Lily said. "Now it's my turn." Her compassion, free of bitterness, floored me. Around then, I faced the ghost that still haunted me. Not Walter's body, long gone, but the trauma, guilt and shame. No matter how far I'd come, I felt tainted. Through the school, I found a support group for women survivors of violence. At first I just listened, stunned by stories like mine, abusive husbands, fathers, bosses, women silenced and blamed. "Justice often doesn't come from court," the group's psychologist said. "It's internal, refusing to stay a victim." That hit me hard. I'd been letting Walter and James define my worth, believing I'd always be broken. In 1994, with the group's encouragement, I bought a thick notebook and wrote my story, not for anyone else, just to purge the poison. I wrote about Kentucky, James, Walter's abuse, the escape, prison, rebuilding. Nights after teaching, I'd write until tears blurred the ink. It hurt, but it healed. 6 months later, at dawn by the Cumberland River, I read every page aloud, like a testimony to the sky. Then I burned the notebook, watching ashes drift over the water. "You've got no power over me anymore," I said, to Walter, James, everyone who'd tried to break me. For the first time in decades, I felt truly free. The late 90s brought stability. I taught more advanced classes, honed my craft. Lily graduated nursing school, landed a hospital job. In 1997, she gave me a grandson, Gabriel. "I want him to know your story, your strength," she said, placing him in my arms. Holding him, I marvelled at life's full circle. Me, once torn from my daughter, now a grandmother from day one. When Gabriel was 2, Lily married David, a kind doctor from her hospital, the man I'd always hoped she'd find. In 2000, at 49, I bought a small house in a modest neighbourhood, paid with years of savings and a government loan. The day I got the keys, I walked every room, heart bursting. "Grandma, is this really yours?" Gabriel asked, racing through empty rooms. "Really, truly, kiddo," I said. "Nobody can take it." By 2005, at 54, I retired from public teaching but couldn't sit idle. I started giving private literacy classes at home for adults, charging what they could afford, sometimes just a casserole or a favour. Slowly, the community's view of me shifted. I wasn't the murderer anymore, but Teacher Evie, the one who helped folks read letters or teach their kids. Redemption didn't come from a courtroom, but from neighbours who'd once shunned me. In 2010, Lily had my namesake, Anna, a granddaughter carrying my name. "So she'll grow up strong like you," Lily said. Our bond deepened. We weren't just mother and daughter, but confidants, friends. She never blamed me for our years apart, only admired how I'd rebuilt. As I aged, I felt a pull to share my story wider, not for fame, but to tell other women they weren't alone. In 2015, at 64, I started speaking at community centres, night schools, support groups. I told my raw truth, mistakes and all, showing the strength I'd found. "If I survived, you can too," I'd say to rooms of women with familiar haunted eyes. Some cried, some hugged me, some judged, but every "I thought I was alone until I heard you" made the scars worth showing. In 2018, Gabriel started law school, aiming to be a prosecutor for violence against women cases. "Because of you, Grandma," he said, "I want others to get the justice you didn't." That same year, Vanderbilt Law School invited me to speak about women in the prison system. Me, barely a high school grad, addressing future lawyers. Shaking, I shared my story and the system's failures, how it discredits survivors, punishes self-defense, destroys instead of heals. "Real justice sees the full humanity in every person," I said. The standing ovation and tearful students left me floored, sparking invites to speak elsewhere. In 2020, when the pandemic locked us down, Gabriel had an idea. "Grandma, share your story online. Women trapped with abusers need it now." The internet? I could barely text, but he got me simple gear and taught me the ropes. Lily helped shape my stories, and Grandma's Tales was born, filmed in my living room with Anna playing nearby. Our first video got 20 views, the second 100. The third, about Walter's abuse, exploded 100,000 views in a week. Messages poured in from women across America. "Your story saved me. I left my abuser because of you. I thought I was alone." Today in 2025, I'm 74 and Grandma's Tales has over 500,000 subscribers. I get invites for talks, interviews, even documentaries, not for degrees or titles, but for surviving and speaking out. When I think of that 16-year-old dancing with James at the fair, the terrified mom fleeing with her baby, the prisoner who nearly gave up, it feels like another life. Only the core of that Evelyn remains, the part that endured. I learned the hard way we're stronger than we know, that we can lose everything, freedom, family, dignity, and still rise. People ask if I regret what I did. I don't regret surviving. I only wish I'd believed in my worth sooner. That's my real victory over Walter, not just outliving him, but thriving, turning poison into medicine, pain into purpose. If my stories touched you, hit that like button and subscribe to Grandma's Tales for more from this old gal. Drop a comment,